Chapter 21, White Lotus with Green Tea. Among the owners, you could still hear Auntie Lynn chattering away. Everyone has seen the news, right? Our country has the strength to deal with this snowstorm. Don't be nervous, everything will work out. By the way, if anyone needs supplies at home, those of you who can afford it should help out as much as possible. After all, this snowstorm will be over soon, there's no need to hoard supplies. However, only a few people replied to her. Apparently, it had been 2 days, and the snowstorm showed no signs of ending, which made many people worried. Fang Yuqing sent a message to Zhang Yi again. "Zhang Yi, are you okay?" Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. Fang Yuqing probably thought he had been beaten up by Chen Zhenghao. However, he didn't think Fang Yuqing was being kind. "I'm fine." "Oh, that's good." Fang Yuqing was actually a little disappointed. "But soon," she said, "we're running out of food at home, and I remember you bought a lot of things. Can you give me some? I'll buy you dinner sometime." Zhang Yi's mouth curled into a sneer. Sure enough, this woman must have a purpose for seeking him out. He remembered that the last time he went shopping at the supermarket, Fang Yuqing and Lin Caning had also bought some things. Although they weren't as many as he had bought, they weren't so few that they would last for 2 days. "Oh, you're talking about a long time ago. I didn't keep those things at home, and there aren't actually many things in my house." Fang Yuqing still refused to give up. "Can you at least give me some instant noodles? You're in charge of the warehouse, so you must have some non-perishable food at home." Zhang Yi was very stubborn. "I really don't have any instant noodles. Look, this is all I can usually eat." He took a picture of the Australian lobster and steak on the table and sent it to Fang Yuqing. Fang Yuqing, who was on the other side, saw the photo and her eyebrows shot up in anger. "Damn you, Zhang Yi, what do you think you're doing? Are you trying to deliberately upset me?" Next to her, her best friend Lin Caning poked her head out of the covers. It was so cold that the two of them had slept in the same bed. As soon as she saw the delicious food in the photo, Lin Caning's eyes glowed with envy. These little fairies don't cook at all during the week. They either order takeout or let their men take them out to dinner. The heavy snowfall that has shut down the city in recent days has left the two of them starving. They can only eat instant noodles and canned food, which they don't usually like. Seeing that Zhang Yi can still eat Australian lobster and steak, the two women feel angry and envious at the same time. They are angry because Zhang Yi is actually eating all the food by himself and doesn't even think about bringing them some. Lin Caning immediately said sourly, "Wow, this Zhang Yi is really too much. There are all these delicious foods in the house, and he didn't even think to send you any. It's a shame that he kept saying he liked you in the past." I think he was completely insincere. Fang Yuqing was also very unhappy. This wasn't the first time Zhang Yi had sent her a photo. She also knew that Zhang Yi was deliberately provoking her. However, she still believes that Zhang Yi likes her, but is just using this method to get her to give in. Stupid. You want me to be your girlfriend just because of a little food? Zhang Yi, you are really naive. Fang Yuqing said with disdain in her mouth. As a proud girl from a fishing village, she of course has to maintain her lofty image. But looking at the photos Zhang Yi sent, the longing in her eyes was so hard to hide. Lin Caning naturally understood her as well. So she said, "Yuqing, why don't you just tell Zhang Yi that you can have dinner with him? But he needs to provide the food. In that case, you can save face and still eat delicious Australian Wagyu beef. I'm sure he'll be so excited he'll agree right away." Fang Yuqing frowned and thought about it. Zhang Yi was just a high-level spare tire in her heart. Although he is very handsome and has some assets, he is still a long way from the handsome rich guy in her heart. Under normal circumstances, it is absolutely impossible for her to bow her head. But now, she really can't stand eating instant noodles and canned food every day. Then give him a chance to eat with me. Fang Yuqing pouted, speaking somewhat unwillingly. She picked up her phone and sent a message to Zhang Yi. "Zhang Yi, it's been a long time since we got together. Why don't you come over to our place for dinner tonight?" Zhang Yi smiled when he saw the message. You're treating me to dinner? Great, thank you. These words made Fan Yuqing on the other end of the phone turn white with anger. But it could also be from the cold. She angrily said to Lin Canning, "This Zhang Yi really doesn't know how to behave. I gave him the opportunity to invite me to dinner, but instead he actually wants me to invite him." Lin Canning froze for a moment. She seemed to have never expected that Zhang Yi, who had always pursued Fan Yuqing in the past, would suddenly become so inconsiderate. Strange, could lapdogs ever have a day of consciousness? Fan Yuqing had already angrily thrown her phone aside. She said angrily, "This Zhang Yi, I was going to keep him as my spare tire. Now he has to wait in line for a while. I'm really angry this time. From now on, I will never speak to him again. Even if he comes begging, it's useless." Li Canning was also adding fuel to the fire, although she was envious. Exactly, look at his own virtue. If he wants to chase after you, but is so stingy, then he deserves to be single forever. The two continued to insult Zhang Yi for a while. During this time, Fan Yuqing picked up her phone, thinking that Zhang Yi would send a message apologizing. But Zhang Yi didn't send a single message, which made her even more angry. Lin Canning, on the other hand, had a devious idea. She secretly sent a message to Zhang Yi. "Zhang Yi, why are you so stupid? Now Yuqing is upset, do you know how serious the problem is?" After receiving the message, Zhang Yi glanced at it habitually. Now for him, reading the messages in various chat groups had become a way to take pleasure. What else could be more exciting than human nature in the midst of the apocalypse? Finding that the message was from Lin Canning, Zhang Yi glanced at it and then laughed. One plays the white face, the other the red face, right? You two really put on a show. Zhang Yi had long since seen through this combination of green tea and white lotus flowers. Usually, Lin Canning would help Fan Yuqing out. This was because Fan Yuqing needed to maintain the image of a pure goddess. So it was Lin Canning who would ask for gifts and hint that the guys should help Fan Yuqing spend money. Chapter 22, It's Still Better to Have a Spare Tire. Zhang Yi pretended to be confused and said, "What's wrong? I haven't done anything bad." Lin Canning said, "Are you stupid? It's snowing heavily and the city is under blockade. We've almost run out of food at home. If you send some delicious food over right now, wouldn't that show Yuqing how loyal you are? If I were you, I would send over all the good food in the house, like steaks and lobsters. If Yuqing is moved at that time, won't your chances be greater?" Zhang Yi looked at the message sent by Lin Canning and could already imagine the gluttonous look on the face of that woman. He sneered. What is the difference between this kind of behavior and begging for food? But the ridiculous thing is, if you want to beg for food, just do it, but don't put on the appearance of being given charity. It's almost as if Zhang Yi is giving them food, but instead they are giving Zhang Yi a chance. This kind of attitude really made Zhang Yi want to slap them hard. Shameless. Zhang Yi decided to tease these two green tea bitches a little. He said, "But we don't have much food at home. It's just enough for me to eat." Lin Canning frowned and immediately criticized, "You're so stupid. The snowstorm can only last a few days. If you go without eating for 2 meals, you'll be able to trick Yuqing into going out with you, and you'll make a fortune. If you can't even bear to give up a little food, I can see that you're not really sincere about our Yuqing." Zhang Yi laughed even harder. These two women, one playing the villain and the other the victim, had completely figured out the art of manipulation. Unfortunately, Zhang Yi had been reborn and had long since seen through their shameless masks. Facing Lin Canning's complaints, he simply replied with a faint "oh," then threw his phone aside and ignored her. Lin Canning was furious when she saw the word "oh." "Oh? What do you mean by "oh"? I've been talking to you for ages, and this is your attitude? Hurry up and bring me my food. I want to eat steak and Australian lobster too." Lin Canning is a glutton. She hasn't had anything good to eat in the past 2 days, and seeing Zhang Yi eating a big meal made her drool. She had originally wanted to use Fan Yuqing's name to trick Zhang Yi into bringing her all the good food. But things had developed in the exact opposite direction to what she had expected. The word "oh" almost made her break her guard. Could it be that he was no longer interested in Fan Yuqing? No, 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 absolutely not. Lin Canning recalled Zhang Yi's attentions towards Fan Yuqing over the past few years and immediately shook her head. He must just be temporarily out of his mind. Lin Canning was angry, so she went to find Fan Yuqing and told her what she had learned, exaggerating the situation. Of course, she told Fan Yuqing that she had only sought Zhang Yi out to help her get supplies. Fan Yuqing said coldly, with a cold expression on her face, "Who is Zhang Yi? Do I know him? Don't mention him in front of me again." Now if Zhang Yi wanted to be her lapdog again, he would have to apologize properly for what had happened in the past few days, and beg for her forgiveness at great cost. Lin Canning nudged Fan Yuqing, "This Zhang Yi is not open-minded. Don't you have other lapdogs?" In their community, there were many colleagues who worked in the warehouse. Among them were Fan Yuqing's other suitors, such as Zhou Peng, who was the one who showed her the most devotion. Fan Yuqing naturally knew who Lin Canning was talking about. She shrugged with indifference, that Zhou Peng wasn't even her spare tire. Although he had previously worked at Walmart, Zhou Peng didn't even own a house in Tianhai City and was still renting. Fan Yuqing had only used him to take advantage of him, and she didn't have a good impression of him at all. Lin Canning persuaded, "It's so cold outside, and the snow is falling so heavily. We can't go out to buy anything, so why don't we use him to help us with some errands?" Fan Yuqing's eyes wandered for a while, and she felt that Lin Canning did have a point. So she sent a message to Zhou Peng. Unexpectedly, within 5 minutes, Zhou Peng came running over, carrying a backpack full of food. After all, he worked in the warehouse of Walmart, and they would often take discounted goods home with them. So naturally, there was some stock at home. At Fan Yuqing's word, Zhou Peng was like a shot of adrenaline, and he specially picked out the best things to send her. Zhou Peng also patted his chest and promised, "Fan Yuqing, if you want me to do something, just say the word. You know I'll do anything for you." Fan Yuqing rarely smiled at Zhou Peng. "Thank you, Zhou Peng. You're so nice." She sent him off with a few sweet words. Then she went back inside the house and immediately changed her expression. "Pfft, with that bear-like appearance of yours, you still dare to have thoughts for me? Maybe in your next life." The atmosphere in the entire building had gradually become strange. The temperature was extremely low, and even with the heater on the whole time, the temperature inside the house was below zero. This was something that people from the south in Tianhai City simply could not adapt to. Moreover, they were not in the habit of stocking up on supplies, and the 2 days of freezing had already emptied the refrigerators in every household. Although Auntie Lin is still saying that everything will be fine and the snowstorm will soon pass, everyone still has their own concerns. However, Zhang Yi is happy to see all this. He has made every preparation for the end of the world, and is actually living a more comfortable life than before the end of the world. He is like an outsider, quietly watching the drama outside. After Chen Zhenghao and his subordinates were taught a lesson by Zhang Yi, they temporarily stopped coming to cause trouble. They also knew that Zhang Yi's home was not an easy place to break into. Moreover, Chen Zhenghao's leg was basically useless. If he couldn't go to the hospital, he would become permanently disabled in a matter of days. As for the other little underlings, after getting soaked in the water, they all fell ill with colds and fevers. Without any way to keep warm, they dragged their sick bodies around. They probably wouldn't die from food shortages, but they would die from high fevers first. Zhang Yi spent his time at home playing games and chatting with people online. When he had nothing to do, he would go to the gym. There were lots of international fitness equipment brands at home anyway. Otherwise, he would read various professional books he downloaded from the internet. For example, Barefoot Doctor's Handbook for the Urban Warrior and Militia Training Manual. It's better to be prepared than to be ill-prepared. Having mastered this professional knowledge, it's best if you don't need it in the future, but if you encounter an emergency, it might just save your life. Outside, it's snowing heavily, and the sky is covered by clouds, making it difficult to distinguish between day and night. On the morning of the third day, Zhang Yi climbed out of bed, embraced a delicious Peking roast duck, and looked at the clock. It's about time. The show is about to begin, Zhang Yi said indifferently. At that moment, the phone chat group went completely haywire. Chapter 23, Water and Power Outages. 3 days after the end of the world, the real show began. Zhang Yi knew what would happen on this day, so he stayed up all night, waiting to see the show. What happened was actually very simple. The electricity in the entire Yuelu neighborhood suddenly went out. And soon after, due to the chain reaction of the power outage, the water company was unable to supply water normally. The water supply system also had problems, and the water supply was cut off in every household. Zhang Yi had expected all this. After all, at the beginning of the apocalypse, no one could have predicted how long the extreme low-temperature disaster would last. The authorities were still trying their best to support and solve the snowstorm. But as time passed, they realized on the third day that it was simply not a problem that could be solved by human power. With the cold weather, major hydropower plants were shutting down one after the other, and thermal power plants were unable to continue generating electricity because their staff could not work. Once all cities in the country had used up their stored electricity, power outages were inevitable. At this point, I'm afraid that only a small number of nuclear power plants were still operating. However, the electricity generated was naturally supplied to government departments for use. With no water and no electricity, the lives of ordinary people suddenly plunged into darkness. Zhang Yi turns on his phone and sees that many chat groups are reporting over 99 messages. Does your family have electricity? Our family has no electricity. And the tap water has stopped too. What's going on? Our family also has no water or electricity. It's so cold, the heater doesn't work and is completely out of order. How are we going to survive like this? Why doesn't the government do something about this? If this continues, I'm afraid people will die of cold. Zhang Yi shook his head. At this time, the government had no time to care about everyone. If you want to survive, you have to rely on yourself. He also knew that the end of the world had truly begun today. Without electricity and food in the modern world, mankind would also face mass extinction. Zhang Yi thought about all this and looked at his home with a sense of unease. When he saw his warm and safe house, which was as secure as a steel drum, and the supplies and dimensional space that seemed to go on forever, a sense of reassurance welled up in his heart. The group of homeowners was also full of nervous complaints at this time. When will this snow stop? The heater doesn't work anymore, and it's 30 degrees below zero in the house. If this continues, people are really going to freeze to death. The water has stopped too. Are we supposed to drink snow water? We don't have much food at home either, and the heavy snow has blocked the doors so we can't go to the supermarket. What are we going to do? Someone started to taunt Auntie Lin. Auntie Lin, didn't you say before that everything would be fine? Exactly, I didn't go out to buy supplies because I took your word for it. Now what's the solution? When are they going to come and save us? Say something. Auntie Lin was anxious and panicked when she faced the questions from her neighbors. She was even more scared than her neighbors. The owners were not sure how the authorities were going to save them. However, Auntie Lin had already received some news in advance through the neighborhood committee. There's a snowstorm going on all over the world, and it's said to be a disaster that only happens once every several 100,000 years. Maybe we're experiencing another mass extinction, the end of the world. The authorities are doing their best to support us, but with over 1 billion people in our country, it's impossible to take care of everyone. Several major cities in the country have already fallen. If we want to survive, we have to rely on ourselves. We must stock up on supplies, especially food and energy for heating. I've already started asking for supplies from door to door, in the name of the neighborhood committee. But, aren't you harming people by doing this? Harming people? If I don't do it, our family will freeze to death or starve to death in 3 days at most. I can't think about that anymore. I don't know how many people will die in this snowstorm, so I can only worry about myself and my family. Yes, while we still have some influence, we should quickly get more supplies. At a time like this, the most important thing is to survive. Auntie Lynn stared at the messages in the neighborhood committee group, her whole body shaking violently. Although the indoor temperature had already reached more than -30°C, cold sweat was still running down her forehead. She was lying in bed, with 3 thick quilts covering her, suffocating her, but she didn't dare to move them. Because the room was like an ice cave at this time. At this moment, her grandson Xiaohu asked from under the covers, "Grandma, why is it so cold outside? Where are Mom and Dad coming back?" Auntie Lynn looked at her little grandson and her heart sank. She had just talked to her son and daughter-in-law today. They were both working outside the city and were now trapped in their rented apartment, in a situation not much better than theirs. "I must protect us both, we must survive." Auntie Lynn clenched her lips and a ruthless look flashed in her eyes. "Xiaohu, it's okay, in a little while, your father and mother will be back." After comforting Xiaohu a little, Auntie Lynn picked up her phone and began speaking in the property owners group. "Everyone, the disaster is only temporary. It's cold outside, so it's not surprising that the water and power are cut off. Don't worry, there are already staff members working on the repairs. The authorities have issued an announcement that during this emergency, our neighborhood committee will be responsible for the unified management of the owners in the community. I hope everyone will cooperate with our work. If anyone does not cooperate and causes serious problems, we will ask the police to arrest and interrogate them afterwards." Auntie Lynn's words were extremely serious. This caused strong dissatisfaction among the owners. They also didn't expect that at a time like this, the neighborhood committee would not only fail to explain their own inaction. Instead, they intimidated the owners. However, everyone was a little scared, and no one dared to speak out against it. Zhang Yi leisurely looked at the message from Auntie Lynn on his phone. He raised his eyebrows and let out a derisive laugh. Of course he knew that Auntie Lynn was lying. In her previous life, she had used this despicable method to cheat others of a lot of supplies. But he had no intention of exposing Auntie Lynn's tricks. After all, what did it matter to him whether the other neighbors lived or died? Zhang Yi turned on the TV and continued playing his game. Water and electricity outages? No problem. His warehouse is stocked with tons of backup batteries, as well as engines and fuel and solid alcohol. As for water, he has hoarded 500 tons of tap water alone, not to mention tens of thousands of tons of mineral water and drinks in the warehouse. And when necessary, he can also get water by melting snow. In short, he has no shortage of either fresh water or energy. Chapter 24, Auntie Lynn's Threat. Zhang Yi was playing video games and eating imported snacks, living life to the fullest. The entire Tianhai city, or more than 99% of the world, had been plunged into a state of water and power outages. The water outage was slightly more manageable. Those who couldn't stand it anymore could go out and dig through the snow to get water. But the power outage was the most intolerable thing of all. Modern people's bodies are very delicate, and letting them live in temperatures of dozens of degrees below zero is simply going to kill them. Zhang Yi's neighbors were wailing in the owners' group, and fear made them choose to huddle together for warmth at this time, hoping that someone could bring them a glimmer of hope. Chen Zhenghao, who had previously had a leg broken by Zhang Yi, was now dragging a broken leg around the house and was almost frozen to death. He already had an injury, and having to live in extremely low temperatures caused him twice the amount of harm and suffering. His little underlings were even worse off. Although Zhang Yi only doused them with a water hose at the time, there was simply no way to keep warm in these temperatures. The indoor temperature slowly approached the outdoor temperature, reaching -50 to 60 degrees Celsius. Several people started to develop high fevers, with the lowest temperature reaching 39 degrees and several others reaching 40 degrees and above. Since they had no sense of preparing medicine, there was no ibuprofen at home. And in this weather, it was impossible for them to go out and buy medicine. Therefore, they could only choose to tough it out. This is why Zhang Yi did not shoot them at that time. Letting them freeze to death in their daily despair is much more pleasant than killing them directly. Zhang Yi sat on the carpet, intently playing a video game. It was freezing outside, with a howling northerly wind blowing flurries of snow. The room, however, was 27 degrees Celsius, brightly lit, and fully stocked with food, drink, and entertainment. If there was anything missing, it would probably be a woman to keep Zhang Yi company. However, Zhang Yi is not an idiot obsessed with sex. Having suffered from women in his previous life, he now absolutely prioritizes his own safety and quality of life. Unless it isn't an absolutely safe situation, he will never let anyone into his safe house. In the end times, people's hearts are absolutely unpredictable. He once witnessed a woman smashing her own husband to death just for a pack of instant noodles. At this moment, Zhang Yi's phone lit up again. He took it with interest and saw that it was Auntie Lin tagging everyone in the owner's group. Due to the current blizzard, it has had a huge impact on everyone's lives. According to official notice, the snow will continue for a relatively short period of time. In order for everyone to get through this difficult time together, everyone can live with dignity during these difficult times. Therefore, starting from now, the neighborhood committee will collect the supplies that each household has on hand and distribute them evenly. This is an official order, and all households must cooperate. Otherwise, if any household is selfish and does not obey the organization's arrangements, they will all be punished by the organization afterwards. Don't think that you are capable enough to oppose our organization. Remember, all of your households have their own weaknesses. Zhang Yi sneered. It was the same routine as in his previous life. As a member of the neighborhood committee, this Auntie Lin didn't have much power, but she still had more sources of information than the average person. She must have long known that the end of the world was approaching, and that the authorities had already ground to a halt in Tianhai City. That was why she wanted to use deception and intimidation to get everyone to hand over the supplies they had in their possession to her. But Auntie Lin's methods were actually not very clever. After all, she was just an old woman with a secondary school education. In fact, a clever person would be able to see that there is something wrong with what she said right away. Even if the authorities were to carry out centralized control, it is unlikely that such an order would be issued. However, there are more than 50 households living in their building, and there will always be some timid people who, out of fear, obey Auntie Lin's words. Zhang Yi had no intention of getting involved in this matter, but just wanted to watch the fun. Sure enough, this time, due to Auntie Lin's strong tone, she was going to confiscate the supplies from each household, and finally some people were forced to give in. Wang Min, who lives on the 15th floor, is also a colleague of Zhang Yi. As a thrifty housewife, she often brings things home from the warehouse. This is well known to her neighbors. Auntie Lin wants to collect supplies from everyone's home, and their family is definitely not exempt. Wang Min said, "Now that the heavy snow has blocked the doors, there is simply no way to go out. Each family doesn't have enough food to eat. And you want to collect it all and distribute it uniformly? Is that reasonable?" Another resident, Sun Jichao, also said, "Everyone is having a hard time, and it's not easy to save food. And now you want to confiscate it? That's going too far." Auntie Lin gritted her teeth and pressed the voice button with her finger. "I've said it before, these are extraordinary times, so of course extraordinary measures must be taken. The snowstorm will be over soon, so don't worry. We're just asking everyone to redistribute their supplies. At a time like this, many families don't have anything to eat. Are you that selfish? Don't you care about your neighbors? Some families have stocked up on supplies, so naturally some people lack supplies at home. So the people who lack supplies at home naturally came out in support of Auntie Lin. That's right, we're all neighbors, so what's wrong with helping each other out at a time like this? It's just some food and drinks. Usually people can't afford them, it's just that the situation is special these 2 days. This is an organizational decision. If you don't comply, the consequences are not something anyone can bear." The two groups of people in the WeChat group began arguing. Zhang Yi didn't say a word, and neither did the White Lotus Fan Yuqing and Lin Caning. Because in fact, their households still had quite a lot of supplies. But given their personalities, they would never hand them over. Zhang Yi's desire to watch the show was soon broken. Although he didn't say anything, Auntie Lin took the initiative to send him a private message. Zhang, you work at the warehouse, so you must have a lot of food and drinks at home, right? I remember that last time you bought 3 large carts of supplies. Now that everyone is in trouble, it's time for you to show your spirit. Don't worry, we'll definitely pay you back once the snowstorm is over. Everyone will remember your kindness. Auntie Lin first created a stir in the WeChat group to scare the timid. Then she began to break through one by one. As long as she could trick one household, she could obtain some supplies, which would enable her and her grandson to survive for a few more days. Zhang Yi, the warehouse supervisor at Walmart, was also targeted by Auntie Lin. Chapter 25, Scolding the Old Woman. Zhang Yi sneered. In his previous life, he had underestimated the severity of the snowstorm. Thinking that he could sell the neighbors a big favor, he took some of the supplies he had hoarded out. But what was the result? Instead of being grateful, the neighbors had the impression that he still had a lot of supplies at home. The end result was that he was killed when the doors were broken down and his supplies were used as food rations. It can be said that this old woman surnamed Lin was also responsible for his death in his previous life. He raised the corner of his mouth and lazily sent a voice message. That's great, I've also run out of food at home. Auntie Lin, when you collect the supplies, please share some with me. Auntie Lin was so angry that she scolded him on the spot in the house. Bah! Who are you trying to fool? Your house must have hoarded a lot of things. Humph, I've worked in the warehouse for so many years, I don't believe you're innocent. She was so sure because Zhang Yi had often helped her neighbors buy discounted goods from the Walmart warehouse. For example, some goods with damaged packaging and foods that were about to expire were sold at very low prices. As internal employees, they all had the right to purchase first. Sometimes the warehouse would even give them out as employee benefits. Auntie Lin had a pale face and gritted her teeth, but she still refused to give up. She was convinced that Zhang Yi was a big fish, and as long as she could get Zhang Yi to talk, she and her daughter could get their hands on a ton of supplies, at least enough to last another week. Auntie Lin took a deep breath and said in a tone that was gentle but firm, Zhang, don't joke with your auntie. Everyone knows that you are the manager of the Walmart warehouse, so how could your home run out of food and drinks? This is an order from the organization, you must obey. You have contributed to the community, and everyone in the organization will remember your good deeds. Be a good boy and give your things to your auntie, and set a good example. Zhang Yi picked up a toothpick to pick his teeth. He had eaten a roast leg of lamb for lunch and some food got stuck in his teeth. He said in a lazy tone, I really didn't lie to you, I've run out of everything at home. These days, even the landlord's family doesn't have any food left. Auntie Lin, please give me some instant noodles. As a member of the neighborhood committee, you have to take the lead and show some spirit. Zhang Yi said ironically. Seeing that Zhang Yi was not going to be convinced, Auntie Lin knew that she could no longer use a soft approach. She raised her voice and her tone became low. Zhang Yi. You won't listen to reason, will you? Do you think I'm talking to you in my personal capacity? I'm speaking on behalf of the organization. By refusing to hand over the supplies in your possession, you are defying the organization. I will deal with you later. Zhang Yi sneered. Bah! Still representing the organization? You really take every little thing seriously. You're just an ordinary neighborhood committee member, not even a civil servant, let alone a career civil servant. All you do is fool around with the old folks, and you still dare to act big with me? You must be dreaming. You can do whatever you want, I'll be waiting for you at home. Zhang Yi ruthlessly revealed the true face of Auntie Lin. The staff of the neighborhood committee are only social workers, they don't have any official status at all, and they are not civil servants. Moreover, Auntie Lin is just a lowly errand runner in their neighborhood committee, not even a minor leader. Of course, even if she were some big shot, Zhang Yi wouldn't give a damn at a time like this. After berating Auntie Lin, Zhang Yi hung up the phone decisively and blocked her number. Because this tyrannical old woman loved to curse, he didn't have the time to argue with her. Auntie Lin was furious at Zhang Yi's actions, which had made her lungs burst. Zhang Yi had repeatedly antagonized her, rubbing her face on the ground like crazy. How could she, who considered herself the leader of the community, put up with this? Zhang Yi, you damn thing. I really want to kill you. Auntie Lin yelled angrily. But she could only scold Zhang Yi for a bit. In fact, she could hardly protect herself these days, and there was no way she could really do anything to Zhang Yi. She wanted to kick Zhang Yi out of the chat group for property owners. But on second thought, that wouldn't do Zhang Yi any harm. She also wanted to call on everyone in the group to collectively blame Zhang Yi. But then everyone would know that Zhang Yi had refused to pay for supplies. If everyone followed suit, she wouldn't be able to deceive anyone. In any case, at this point, there was nothing she could do to Zhang Yi. The more Auntie Lin thought about it, the angrier she became, and the more uncomfortable she felt. But she had no choice but to swallow her anger. For her, the most urgent task now was to deceive others. She had to take as much supplies as she could before they came to their senses. Over the next 2 days, Auntie Lin used a mixture of persuasion and intimidation to trick several households into giving her supplies. But not everyone was a fool. In the end times, everyone's priority is how to survive for themselves and their families. Some people chose to ignore Auntie Lin. Some who were more hot-tempered simply told her to go away when she came to their doors asking for supplies. As for people like Chen Zhenghao and Zhu Hao, who are not to be trifled with, she doesn't even have the courage to go to their doors. Zhang Yi saw all of this clearly through the security cameras. But he had his own fun and ate his fill. Naturally, there was no need to meddle in other people's affairs. It was already the 5th day since the ice storm. Normal families only stored food for 3 to 5 days. On their side, since some people work in the big warehouse, they have slightly more supplies at home. However, due to the severe low temperatures, heating requires fuel and food, so supplies are consumed faster. In the past few days, a sense of hostility has gradually begun to appear in the chat group. At first, the owners who were honest and obedient and waited for the official organization to rescue them also changed their mentality due to the lack of energy to heat and food. In particular, those who had previously been coaxed and tricked by Auntie Lin into giving away their supplies could no longer hold back and began to question Auntie Lin in the group chat about how the supplies would be distributed after they were taken away. Auntie Lin, didn't you agree to distribute the supplies evenly after they are collected? We've run out of food, and it's been 2 days. Can you get some for us? Yes, we agreed to distribute the supplies evenly so that everyone can eat. The residents all shouted, including those who had not taken anything before, hoping to take advantage of the situation to get a share. Auntie Lin, however, seemed to have disappeared without a trace, not responding to any of them. Of course she could read the messages, but at the moment she had no intention of handing out any supplies at all. She and Zhang Yi were the only ones in the entire building who knew what was going on. Outside, chaos had already broken out. People needed supplies to survive, otherwise they would surely die. Hugging her grandson, she curled up under the covers on the 5th floor and gritted her teeth, saying, "How could I possibly give back the supplies I worked so hard to obtain?"